This mic.
All right. First up, we have the proposed budget amendment for the proceeds received from the totaled 2014 Ford Taurus. This was one of the police vehicles that was totaled, and we are basically increasing revenue for the insurance proceeds that we've already received, $15,538.97. And then we will increase the expense line item so that we can purchase the new vehicle to replace. Any questions?
So we need to vote on the budget request. I moved we accept this budget request, $15,538.97.
Can I get a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second that we would accept the report coming from Ms. Hefty. All in favor, show of hands. Opposes, no. Report being received.
Thank you. Next, we have the monthly financial update for June 2016. Since we're 6 months through the year, that's 50% of the year has passed. If you'll just keep that number in mind as we go through the report. If you start on the top left, pointed out a few selected statistics. You can see our total cash at the end of June is $8.8 million. Our total outstanding bond principal is $33,370,000. This is for our sewer debt, and that's just the principal portion. And then lastly listed there is the number I just pulled from our most recent audit, which you'll hear from our auditor next. This is our total unrestricted net position. So this is our reserve, and this is almost $7.5 million. Next, these are our major revenue streams for the city. And you can see all of them are higher than last year, which is a great thing. If you look at the percentage of budget, as I was mentioning, we are halfway through the year, so it'd be nice to see close to 50% there. But in the general fund, a lot of the revenues lag until the end of the year, such as property tax. That'll start coming in October and November. Move on down to budget status. This is by fund in total, revenues and expenditures. If you look at the percentage of budget, that's where, again, you'd want to see about 50%. If you look at all the expense line items, they are the expense in total, I should say, they are all less than 50%, which is great. And our revenue, general fund revenue is at 27%, which again, general fund revenue lags behind in the year. Water sewer fund is already at 48% of the year, and solid waste is at water sewer fund is at 48, and solid waste is at 42. Any questions about the June financial update? There's an echo in there.
One comment.
Yeah, this is different from what we saw Thursday. More of an update, or
there was one change. Staff had noticed that the hotel motel tax, we had 2 items that were posted in the wrong account. So when I changed those, they were that brought us up to 51,000 year to date, and that shows us at a higher percentage compared to the prior year. That was the only number I changed. The revised version is up on the website, as well as the latest check register.
All right.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Did we get a motion to accept that report?
I make a motion to accept the financial report.
I second that motion. We've heard the motion and we've got the second. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? It's been moved and second that we received the report from Ms. Hefty. Next, we'll have the presentation of the 2015 audit.
All right. Just in time. Everyone loves to hear an audit. Well, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is James Bentz. I'm one of the partners with Molden & Jenkins, and we're the audit firm that conducted the city's audit for the year end December 31st, 2015. You should have 2 documents that I'm going to kind of just touch on in front of you. One is your annual financial report. It's the bigger, more colorful document. And then the one that I'll primarily flip through is our auditor's discussion analysis. It's a smaller document. And don't worry, I'm not going to read you the whole thing. But I do want to just kind of flip through it real quick and point out some information. This is our first year working with the city. So if you flip to page 2, just to kind of give you a little background information about our firm and our qualifications. We're a regional firm. Your audit was conducted out of our Atlanta office. We serve about 300 different governments throughout the Southeast, providing about 70,000 hours of audit services to governments. So we specialize in the government industry, whereas other firms kind of use it as filler work. It's something we dedicate about 25% of our firm to. And then there you can kind of see the mix of our client base. Again, I was the engagement partner on the job, and we had an engagement in charge out here, McLean Caldwell, who worked on the day-to-day management of the job. Page 3 just gives a little other information about the services our firm provides, just so you can kind of get a better picture of who we are. And then on page 4, just to kind of give you the background, the financial statements that you have before you, those are the responsibility of the city and city's management to prepare those items, including all the support that goes with it. And as the external auditor, it's our responsibility to give an opinion on the preparation of those statements. We were able to give an unmodified opinion this year, which is essentially a clean opinion that says that the information included in the financial statements is materially correct as required by the auditing standards generally accepted in the United States. In your financial statements, one thing to point out, this year you were required to implement the accounting standards related to pension plans. And so with that, there was a restatement of your opening balances for the governmental activities and your business type activities. And if you look on page 6, you'll see that the restatement to the government activities was to recognize an additional liability of about $640,000, and in the business type activities about $173,000. This is accounting for the pension liabilities, and it doesn't change any of the funding policies related to the pension, but it just recognizes the ultimate liability for the city of offering the retirement plan. On page 7, Sarah's slide just gave a little of this information, but just to give you kind of a pie chart of how your revenues for the calendar year 2015 came in, you can see obviously for your general fund, which is your main operating fund, your primary sources of revenue are from your property taxes and your other tax types, whether it be the sales tax or franchise taxes. And then on the next page, as is traditional for most cities, you're primarily using those funds in the general fund to provide public safety, public works, and culture and recreation services to the citizens. If you'll flip to page 10, one thing I do want to kind of point out that we've got kind of a 3-year trend here, and when you're looking at your general fund, traditionally the way readers of the financial statements will measure the health of a general fund is they'll look to see what your unassigned fund balance is compared to your annual expenditures of the fund. And you can see kind of the red line here, your fund balance. General rule of thumb is you want to have about 2 to 3 months, more closer to the 3 months mark of reserves essentially available to cover your operations. And you guys are sitting at a fairly comfortable about 73%. So you could you're more than covering the benchmark needs of the general fund. The caveat to keep in mind there is obviously with a December year end, you've just taken in all of your cash that you're going to need for next year's operations with the timing of the property tax collection. So your number looks really good, but you do have to keep in mind that you've just collected all the cash that pays for your operations. So don't look at that and think, oh, we've got all this extra money to go. You keep in mind that that's what you're going to use primarily for the next year's operations. But to say the city looks, in the general fund, looks good. And at this point, if you don't mind, if you'll flip in your financial statement document. And if you'll go to page 23, I do want to kind of touch on the enterprise funds for just a minute, which is your water and sewer fund and your solid waste fund. I'm flipping to the cash flow statement, which is what we use to kind of gauge how the how the enterprise funds are operating. So that first section you have there, you can see is your cash flow from operations, to which both the water and sewer fund as well as the solid waste fund both had positive cash flows, which is when you're looking at the operations of those funds is a good measure. But then you also have to keep in mind capital needs. Those are not considered operating costs. So your capital outlays, which is that second section where you've used money for capital purposes in your water fund, you can see there was about $900,000 during 2015. And additionally, there were also what's considered non-capital uses where you've transferred monies out for other purposes, which in this case was to help cover the cost of the debt service for the sewer fund. You can see over the course of the year when you considered the operations and the capital and debt service payments which were made during the year, the net change in your cash for each fund was about a total of $15,000. So the two enterprise funds are operating pretty slim. And so there's not much cash being added on an annual basis to those funds. Flipping back to the auditor's discussion and analysis, on page 12 at the bottom of the page, this is kind of what we call our Cliff Notes version of the footnotes. If you're not familiar with the layout of the statements, in the middle of your statements, you've got a very thick footnote section that gives a lot of detail to support the numbers in the financial statements. And this just gives you a general guideline of what each note talks about. So if you're looking for a specific section that you want information on, whether it be capital assets or your debt section, this can you can flip here and just kind of get a general idea of where you want to look in the financial statements. On page 15, just to kind of touch on a few of the required communications that we have. During the course of the audit, we like to be able to report this, and we are happy to report this, that your management team did a good job of working with us. Obviously, this was our first year working in the city. Anytime you have a change, there's always a little bit of a getting to know each other period. And Sarah did a good job of getting us the information we need in a timely manner, and getting us, if you've gone through an audit, the auditors are going to ask for a lot of things up front, get on site and start looking into things and ask more questions. So it's kind of a longer process, but we appreciate the effort that she put in and was able to get us the information we needed. There were some audit adjustments in the audit process. They're included in your financial statements. They've also been posted to the city's general ledger, and for your review, they're also included in the back of this document. But these have all been gone over with management. They've all been posted and accounted for in the system. On page 17, through the process of those adjustments, there were some findings that we reported this year in the financial statements. The auditing standards have set pretty defined marks of where journal entries, when they quantify, when they hit certain quantities or certain values, we have to report them as findings. And so some of those adjustments that were posted through the audit process have been reported as findings, significant deficiencies, or material weaknesses in the financial reporting process. But again, all of these have been discussed. These are all primarily, the first several are related to just sort of general accounting issues and not accountability, but just accounting transactions. And so these have all been discussed with management, gone over with management, and they're here for your review as well.
So, I'm not a big buff of budgets, but so when you're saying adjustments, that means something was, not illegally, but something was wrong that had to be readjusted or revisited.
Yes, ma'am. So from an adjustment standpoint, depending on which item we're testing, it could either mean that the period in which it was being recognized was improper, whether it should have been recognized in 2015 but was being recognized in 16, or maybe it was recognized in 15 and should have been in 14. So we had adjustments dealing with period recognition, just the timing of when that revenue or expenditure gets reported on your books, and not that it was not reported at all.
Oh, okay.
And then there was adjustments related to capital assets that dealt with the ownership of the asset, whether it should have been reported in the water and sewer fund or in governmental activities. So it was accounted for, but accounted for in the wrong manner, and so we made adjustments to correct the reporting period or ownership of those items.
Okay.
On page 25, this is kind of the section, if you ever have a hard time falling asleep at night, we recommend you read. This is where we kind of go in and just give you a very general overview of some of the new accounting standards that are going to be coming out and applicable over the next couple of years. GASB is the standard-setting body for governments, and they've been very busy, so they've got a lot of new standards that are going to be applicable over the next couple of years. One of the things we'll do is we'll make sure to meet with management and go over these as they're applicable to the city, so that the city's on the front end making the necessary changes in accounting for these standards. But obviously the decisions you all make as the governing body have an effect on how they're going to handle these standards. So we want to make sure that you have the information available, and you can go through it at your leisure, or if you have any questions as it comes up, you guys can always feel free to give us a call, and we'll try to help clarify those. And then the last thing that I want to kind of touch on is on page 38, one of the things we do for our clients, which includes management as well as the governing bodies, is as a firm we offer free continuing education classes, which is held quarterly throughout the state. And we'll have classes in the Atlanta area and classes down in the Macon area. And we have kind of a sign-up sheet if you have any interest in signing up for that. There's some email addresses in here, my email as well as Paige, who's our coordinator for those. And when we get ready to host those quarterly classes, we'll send out an email of what the topic is going to be. And if you're interested, it's a free class for you to attend. So we host it, and if you're interested in the topic, you're more than welcome to come and attend the class. And it's for the most part, it's all on governmental accounting. We do occasionally hold topics on items which are not accounting in nature but are relevant to the government, such as payroll kind of items. So if you have any interest in being a part of that, we've got emails. If you'll just email both those email addresses and just let us know you're interested in being signed up for the continuing education classes mailer. We'll get you on the list and get you included in that. With that, that's all I have for the presentation, but if you all have any questions, I'd be happy to try to address those.
I guess the only question I have is I read probably what was more of a summary here so far. And as y'all are looking over, you address any things that you think are weaknesses, SPLOST disbursement, some things with IT and data security. So I guess this is somewhat for staff too. I'm assuming that with these suggestions, that's something that then we go and put into practice to shore up so we don't have those weaknesses.
Well, if you look in the auditor's discussion and analysis, which has, I think you're looking at the management letter, and it has all the same comments in there. If you look at
three items here.
Yes, ma'am. If you look at the book, go to page 21, or I'm sorry, page 22. This comes from the letter that you were holding in your hand, which is what we call the management letter, and this is where it starts with the computer and IT improvements. These are what we consider management points, and they're basically just byproducts of the audit. They're not necessarily, so to say, wrongs or deficiencies, but they're areas where we think improvements could be made. And so there's, with these items, with the management points, there's always a cost analysis that management will need to do to determine whether or not it's important to the city. But they are areas that, as we come in and we've gone through the process, they're things we think could be implemented to help improve the city's accounting structure.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions that we need to?
Which page did you say when you can't sleep at night?
I believe
You
27.
haven't read our sign ordinance, though.
Well, you might have me beat, but
Thank you.
thank you all.
All right, well, we thank you, sir, for your time and sharing that information with us.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
may I take a personal point of privilege, please?
sure.
Council, folks in the audience, you certainly know that we hired and this council affirmed the hiring of Ms. Sarah Hefty as our Chief Financial Officer. Tonight I want to certainly raise her up, give her kudos, let her know that not only did she inherit the previous audit that was way behind, but certainly this year this audit was completed on time. and on schedule, which not only that, at the same time, she was also, of course, with her staff, has juggled and done the same thing for the city of Temple. So I certainly want to extend to her the city's most gracious appreciation, because I had promised you that we would give you clear, concise information, that we would increase the transparency of our budgeting and finance process. And Sarah Hefty and her staff is who's responsible for all those backside initiatives. So in order to show our appreciation, Ms. Sarah, these flowers up here are for you.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Where'd you pick them?
The funeral home across the street.
No, you should, you're supposed to Timothy.